we like to go up to Bear Lake. My Aunt Ardell Larson had a, first she had like a trailer house at Bear Lake, and we all loved to go up there. The first time we we went up there just to see the place. My brother Darrell couldn't help it, but he had to jump in the lake without us. He with his clothes on. He didn't bring a swim. None of us brought a swimsuit, but he could not help, and he's always loved the water. So he has a boat, and he likes to go not snowmobiling,
Water skiing?
water skiing, and we all learned how to water ski up at Bear Lake. And I remember they had like a little fishing boat, and all my brothers liked to get in the boat and go around.
Well, one of the earliest things that I remember was our first car, and it was a '49 Chevrolet, and it was white, and it was a fastback. And I remember riding in the back window behind the second seat. Back in those days, we didn't have seat belts, and would ride into Grandma's house, and I could watch the street lights go by from the back window. I fit back there.
I wanted to tell a story about my dad. That one time I found a radio, a transistor radio, an old transistor radio down the road from my house. And I was so excited because I found this neat radio. And I went home and showed it to my dad and said, "Look what I found. I want to keep it." And my dad said, "Well, we need to go check around the neighborhood to see if it belongs to anybody." So he took me down the road, and we went to about 5 different houses, knocking on the doors to see if anybody had dropped or lost their transistor radio. And we did not find anybody who had lost the radio or who knew about it. And I was so excited because he then let me have it, because he had showed me the honest way is to go around to check and see if someone had lost it. So I thought he was a good example of a good, righteous person.
Okay, so, but the second car I remember, I think we kept that car about 10 years, and then we got a Oldsmobile Super 88, and it was kind of pink, and I think it was about 2 years old when we got it. And it was a nice car, and it was a car that Dad, when he saw when they first came out, he wasn't sure if he could ever afford it, but somehow he bought one, and it was an Oldsmobile 88 station wagon. And it had lots of chrome on it, and it was kind of designed, well, it was, you know, the time of Flash Gordon and rockets and spaceships and so on, so it was kind of designed like kind of sleek, like a rocket ship. Had a lot of chrome, and that was our second car, and we kept it a long time. I'm not sure how long we kept it, but it had some neat features on it. One of the things it had was air ride suspension. It had a compressor built into the motor, and each tire, each wheel had some kind of an absorber that was filled with air, and that's how it rode. But it was problematic, and always had problems, and one time Dad came out to go to work and the car was practically sitting on the ground and he was just fed up with it all. So he had the whole car converted to coil springs and did away with the air ride suspension. But I remember a couple other things about that car. One time we were up um, in Little Cottonwood Canyon or Big Cottonwood Canyon having a picnic, and we were going around the circle, and the circle was lined by big rocks, and we hit one of the big rocks and it pushed the bumper way into the tire. Well, we didn't know what we were going to do, but Dad solved it. Somehow he fastened the bumper to a tree or else the same rock and stuck it in reverse, and he just pulled the bumper right back out again. Apparently those great big bumpers had very little support. The other thing I remember was it was always blowing out mufflers, and it had two mufflers, and I think Dad got tired of paying for nice mufflers, so he put glass packs on it, and it kind of made a big noise after that. But I remember one time we drove into the driveway, and on that bump where you go over the gutter, one of the mufflers fell off, and when we parked in the driveway, the muffler was sitting back out in on the sidewalk.
What's a glass pack?
Glass pack is a real cheap muffler that sounds kind of hot, like the hot rods would have, but it was cheaper, so Dad tried it out. Another thing I remember was one time Dad used to get as much wear out of the tires as he could, and I remember one tire blew on the way back from Salt Lake City one time, and as it turned out, that tire was worn clear through, all the way through, and until it just blew. And another thing I remember, somehow the hood got dented or something, and he had to replace the hood, and he replaced it with a white hood, but he had to make it match, so he got a hold of some spray paint and he sprayed it. It never quite matched, but that's how he fixed it, and that was our second car. It was a fun family car. Remember fathers and sons outings in it and so on. Good memories.
He taught me a lot of business while we were working. He taught me how to treat people, how to work hard. We started as young and in taking little advertisements around the neighborhood. We got 3 cents, I think it was, per handbill advertising a sale at our store. And we were so excited when we had earned $20. That was a lot of money back then. And then my cousins, the Millers, we delivered the handbills, and they helped us deliver handbills. It was so exciting, but I remember when it went from 3 cents up to 4 cents a handbill. And we had a map to make sure we didn't deliver it to anybody twice.
Let me coordinate. Okay, so one story I can think of right off the bat is Dad first. Dad was very particular about fulfilling his calling. And I remember every single Sunday night, Dad would sit down at the kitchen table with a typewriter, pull out the form for minutes of his high priest's quorum meeting, and type up a page of notes on his high priest quorum meeting lesson that day, as well as keep a complete roll of the high priests that were both in sacrament meeting and that were in high priest quorum meeting. And the other thing I saw about Dad throughout his life was whatever calling he did have, he would fulfill to the best of his ability. I don't remember him ever having any significant leadership, the executive callings. But I remember he always did what he was asked to do fully.
Good evening, it's Christmas Day. Sorry we can't be with you. Christmas Day 2015. Britt called me and asked me to share a few short examples of events in my life with Mom and Dad. I was a croup baby, and from the age of about 6 months to about 7 years of age, had many bouts of croup. Laryngotracheitis, triggered by a virus, causes the throat to close off and breathing almost impossible. Had many such events, taken to the hospital, St. Mark's, at least 4 times, once by ambulance in the middle of the night. Mom praying on her knees, Mom and Dad. Dad giving me priesthood blessings. Once having a tracheotomy with my throat slit and a tube put in so that I could breathe directly through the tube. Still have a scar from that. But the power of the priesthood healed in every case. Second event was a severe reaction to anesthesia following or as part of tonsillectomy. Again, at about the age of 4 in 1955, had my tonsils removed at the St. Mark's Hospital. The anesthesiologist doused a rag with ether and put it over my nose, forced me to breathe it till I fell asleep. I remember screaming because I didn't like it. And then I went into a coma for the next 2 weeks after the tonsillectomy. I didn't come out of it. I didn't normally after surgery. And the doctor struggled for 2 weeks to bring me back to life. Came very close to death. Dad, Bishop Delbert Lamb, others administered to me by the power of the priesthood. Eventually, I pulled out of it and came back to normal. The third event involved poliomyelitis. I was stricken with polio 6 weeks after receiving the Salk vaccine, a weakened virus, which was developed about that time, and I was among the first million children vaccinated in the United States against polio. But some of us got polio from the vaccine. It's called vaccine-related paralytic poliomyelitis. And I remember not being able to walk, falling to the ground, not being able to move my legs. Mom put hot packs on my legs. She boiled towels in water, sometimes doing this all night long, wrapping my legs in hot towels, trying to get the leg stimulated to work again. Eventually I was taken back to St. Mark's Hospital, put in an iron lung, a large breathing device, where I spent the next 2 to 3 months. The machine was noisy, it was hot. I didn't so much mind it, but I do remember how it worked. It breathed for me in place of a diaphragm that was paralyzed. Dad and Bishop Delbert Lamb administered more than once with a priesthood blessing that I would recover from polio. One day I did. I completely recovered. I walked again with no residual effects to this day. Again, the power of the priesthood. And then another event at the age of 11 in 1962 when I contracted an osteochondroma, a bone tumor below my right knee. Mom noticed it first. It was half the size of a golf ball growing from my right bone below my knee. Went up to the New Davis Hospital to see Dr. Hicken. He scheduled surgery. Mom called Grandpa S.D. Moore to have my name put in the temple. He instead called President Henry D. Moyle, had my name submitted to the First Presidency for their prayer and blessings during their Thursday morning weekly meeting. I was prayed for by the prophet, President David O. McKay, his counselors, Henry D. Moyle and Hugh B. Brown, and the quorum of the 12 apostles. I was certain that as a result of that blessing I would be healed, and I made a promise that if I were healed, and not lose my leg to amputation, I would serve a mission for the Lord. And I did. The tumor pathology was benign. Instead of an osteosarcoma, it was an osteochondroma, which can develop into osteosarcoma. So they're very serious. But I was healed and served a mission. I know that the power of the priesthood is real, that our Heavenly Father hears our prayers. Mom and Dad certainly loved me and prayed very, very fervently in my behalf many, many times. I enjoyed the healing blessings of the priesthood, and I am very thankful for that. And I leave my testimony of these things to you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right. So I guess the first thing is, if I don't tell the story exactly correctly, don't hold me accountable, because I frankly don't remember the story. I'm just going off what people told me. But anyway, it's still an important story. So when I was about 5 years old, that's kindergarten age, I was playing over at the house of some of my friends. And for whatever reason, I ran home and crossed the street without doing the 3 things they teach you in school: stop, look, and listen. I just ran across the street, not stopping, and lo and behold, there was a car coming up the street, and the 2 of us met, had a fine acquaintance, and the car hit me, and I fell unconscious on the street. The lady driving the car panicked and drove away. I believe she got out, looked at me, panicked, drove away. Fortunately, one of my neighbors, neighbor lady, Mrs. Schultz, just to the east of us, she must have heard a screech or something. Something caught her attention, and so she ran outside, saw what was happening, got the license plate of the car, but then came and attended to my emergency needs. And somebody, don't know who, somebody called the ambulance, called the police ambulance, and so they came to attend to me. At the time, Mom was at Stoker School, down at the elementary school, a couple blocks down the street, 3 blocks down the street, and she was at parent-teacher conferences and had just come out of parent-teacher conferences and was walking home, because at the time she did not have a driver's license. She walked everywhere. She turned the corner and looked up the street, saw the ambulance, and she just knew that it was about the location of her house, and she knew that something had happened. And so she hurried up the street to investigate, and of course learned that I had been injured. I was taken to the hospital, still unconscious, and I think if you think about the kind of situation, certainly Mom and Dad must have been very, very concerned, and I believe I got a blessing, and their prayers must have been very intense that evening, praying for recovery. And it wasn't for a day that I became conscious again. I was unconscious for a full day, and by and by healed up. And I think a lot of the reason for the healing was because of the faith and prayers of my parents. Following that, the only sign of that was I had a dent in the bone structure of my forehead, and it's reported that I had brain damage, but the good news is that I've healed pretty much from both of those, and the dent is hardly visible anymore. And of course, the brain damage, well, you'll have to decide that. But again, I attribute my healing to blessings from Heavenly Father and to my parents' prayers and righteousness.
And that brings me to Mom and how she did a similar thing. I remember that Zina, Mom, did not have a driver's license, and she did not learn how to drive. And I remember I'm not sure how old I was, probably a 12-year-old, Mom actually learning how to drive, taking lessons, and obtaining her driver's license for the first time. And And the next thing to happen after that was, as a family, we all rode into Freed Chrysler Plymouth near Social Hall Avenue in Salt Lake City and sat and got a new 1972 blue 4-door Plymouth Satellite, which I thought was the coolest car in the world because it was just like the cop cars on Adam 12. So it wasn't long, and this was designated officially as Zina's car. It was the first car she ever had, and she has a driver's license now. But it wasn't soon after that that she received a significant calling to be Relief Society president. And I know there's no way she could have fulfilled that calling without a driver's license and a car. Oh, the other thing I remember of the car is it had a stereo in it. Stereophonic sound. And she did a good job. She learned how to drive her car, and she was an excellent Relief Society president. Very organized, very detailed, working very hard to do the right thing. She would call people to help her who were qualified to do the task. I remember it was important in those days to put on a successful ward dinner. Ward dinners were a big thing. And while I remember she often had disagreements with other people about cooking, particularly with Brother Jex and the use of fat. Other than that, she would select the person. I remember Sister Briggs was a school lunch cook, and they were very good at putting on very large meals, and very successful meals. And so I remember they were very good at that, and I learned from that how seriously they took their callings in the ward and in the church. Not to mention Mom's other callings that were significant, like director of the Singing Mothers, or when she directed a regional conference in the Tabernacle. That was significant for me to watch. My mother directing a choir in the choir seat in the loft of the Tabernacle. That made a big impact on me.
The other thing that was fun at my house, we were brought up in a religious family, and my mom and dad loved the Tabernacle Choir, and every Sunday without fail we watched it, either the afternoon session or in the morning when it was actually at 9:30 in the morning, and it's still at 9:30 in the morning. They would faithfully watch the Tabernacle Choir.
The other big impact was when Zina took me on the bus, when we rode the bus, into the Tabernacle. I believe it was for David O. McKay's funeral. And that was really significant. I developed a real love for the building itself of the Tabernacle and the sound and the feeling of the Tabernacle through that experience, which survives with me when I sit in the same seat in the loft today, or, pardon me, in the balcony as I sat for that funeral. It's quite significant to me, and I remember it well.
We had a cockatiel, and it liked to whistle. We taught it how to sing and say little sayings like, "What's up, Doc?" And one time we taught it to jump from my shoulder to her shoulder just by lifting our shoulder up. And she loved that little bird. Then we one time went outside and it was snowing, and we were showing someone how the bird liked to fly from one shoulder to another. And my bird flew away up, and we were very sad.
Okay, well, back in the day when we were applying to get into dental school, the problem wasn't getting in, it was paying for it. The University of Southern California wanted $50,000 up front, and then more would be due later. So we were trying to at least get into a school that was public instead of private, where it would be a little less expensive. And we heard that the University of Washington considered names on Thursday mornings. And so we began fasting and praying on a Wednesday at noon with the thought that we would fast till Thursday at noon. And we talked to Zina and asked her to pray also, because her prayers were always listened to, maybe better than ours. After fasting, I was riding home from on my bicycle from the hardware store. Went home to break my fast, opened the mailbox, and there was an envelope from the state of Utah with a scholarship that would pay for 2/3 of all our tuition for any West Coast school. The timing was just perfect, and we've always felt that that was an answer to our prayers. As it turned out, the state of Utah gave out 5 scholarships that year, and I was given the top one. We had forgotten that we'd even applied for that scholarship. We'd worked hard to save money. We'd saved, in the first year of our marriage, we'd saved $5,000, and I'd inherited $5,000 from my grandpa Fisher, and that wasn't even a start. So this allowed us to go to dental school and come out of dental school with minimal loans due.
Another thing that was fun that we all talk about was my mom's family home evenings, where she needed to teach us, it was like every other lesson about love, and so we have this kind of fun little joke about how she had family home evening about love every week to keep us in line.
I remember there was the night that it was snowing, and we were driving the blue car. We used to give cars names. The name of Mom's car was the blue car. And we were doing donuts in the snow in the parking lot at Stoker School. Problem was, there were big snowbanks. So when the car went sideways in the snow, it went into a snowbank. The snow was hard, and it dented in the side of the door of the blue car. We didn't know what to do. We went to a friend's house. He had some tools, mostly a plunger. And with the plunger, we popped out the dent in the door. It was a big dent. We took care of it pretty good. I don't think Mom ever knew who it was or that it happened.
Grandma loved to sing, didn't she?
Yes. She liked to sing and work at the same time. She would do her dishes, and her voice would carry outside, and you could hear it for quite a ways. She was happy when she was singing. And she liked the little high little melodies that would be absolutely heaven to listen to.